Michigan, one of the most recognized states in the United States, framed by the Great Lakes, the largest body of fresh water on the planet, home to countless species of aquatic life. Around 14,000 years ago, after the glaciers carved their way across the continent, the Great Lakes were born, isolated from the ocean by the towering Niagara Falls. These inland seas evolved into a balanced and unique ecosystem, one unlike any other on Earth. Before the 1800s, these waters sustained Native American communities who fished for survival and tradition. In time, trappers and traders joined them, catching fish to feed local trading posts and their visitors. By the early 1800s, America's westward expansion was underway. New cities, Buffalo, Detroit, Duluth, Milwaukee, and Chicago, began to rise along the shores of the Great Lakes. These cities exploded with growth, serving as gateways to industry and manufacturing. With expansion came demand, a growing population hungry for food. And from that demand, a new opportunity emerged: commercial fishing. All one needed was a boat and some nets. The earliest fishermen used three main types of nets: seine nets, gill nets, and pond or pound nets. Seine nets were long walls of mesh, one end anchored to the shore, the other pulled by hand, horse, or boat. Fish were corralled into the shallows where they could be gathered easily. Gill nets, by contrast, were vertical fences in the water. Floats kept them high, weights held them to the bottom. They could be fished at any depth. When fish swam into them, their gills became caught. When they tried to back out, and they were trapped. Effective, yes, but deadly to many unintended species. Pound nets were supported by long poles harvested from the forests. The poles were pounded into the soft lake bottom, and the nets were stretched perpendicular to shore, guiding fish into the heart-shaped trap, and finally into the holding pen known as the crib or pot. From there, fishermen used long-handled scoops to bring their catch aboard. Being limited to the length of the pole, these nets were used in waters less than 70 feet deep, but usually much shallower. Today's fishermen use trap nets, modernized pound nets that don't require poles. The pot is covered and they can be fished in deeper water. They're safer for the fish, allowing unwanted catches to be released. Yet even with better tools, the challenges continued for the fishermen. Early fishermen used Mackinaw boats, sturdy vessels developed near Mackinac Island. Built from both Native American and French designs, they were 20 to 35 feet long, fitted with sails and oars, and known for the reliability on the open lake. By the 1870s, steam power began to replace sails. Steam tugs could travel farther, endure rougher weather, and carry more gear. Pound net boats were smaller boats that had small cabins in the front and open decks in the rear for retrieving and sorting fish. Gill net boats, called turtlebacks, were almost completely enclosed, efficient, weatherproof, and capable of processing fish on board. As technology advanced, wooden hulls gave way to steel and diesel engines. Boats became heavier and even strong enough to break through ice, extending the fishing season deeper into the year. And with the invention of the mechanical net lifter in the late 1800s, fishermen could set and haul miles of gill nets in a single day. The fishermen learned when and where the fish would gather, targeting spawning runs of whitefish and lake trout in the spring and fall. But with time, this relentless pursuit began to take its toll. By the early 1900s, refrigeration and modern transport, trains and trucks, revolutionized the industry. Fish caught one day could appear in markets across the country days later. Gone were barrels of salted fish and melting boxes of ice. Commercial fishing had reached its peak. At one point, enough nets were set in the Great Lakes to stretch clear across the United States. The once thought limitless resource was being fished beyond recovery. In Michigan's Thumb, the R.L. Gillingham Fish Company was founded in 1886. When the Bayport Fish Company opened nearby in 1895, 11 years later, Bayport became the largest freshwater fishing port in the world. Though both companies suffered devastating losses after a 1945 fire, they rebuilt and carried on. The Gillingham Company closed its doors in 1978, sold to the Bayport Fish Company, which is still in operation today. During the same time, A. Booth and Company of Chicago became a powerhouse, buying fish from nearly every operation across the Great Lakes and even into Canada. They distributed catches nationwide, driving the market forward and the fish populations downward. The industrial boom brought change, and with it, destruction. Agriculture cleared the forests, sending massive amounts of soil into once clear spawning streams. Deforestation during the lumber era worsened the runoff, while bark and sawdust from log drives buried spawning areas. Dams built for mills blocked upstream migrations and changed the flow rates of the rivers. And the growing cities poured sewage and industrial waste directly into the rivers and Great Lakes. The tightly knit, pristine ecosystem of the Great lakes was unraveling. To improve commerce transportation, in 1825, the Erie Canal opened, a 363-mile link from the Hudson River to Lake Erie. It connected the Great Lakes to the ocean for the first time, and with it came a silent consequence, a new route for invasive species. To compete, Canada built the Welland Canal, completed in 1829 and later expanded. By 1932, it had become a deep, wide passage, an artificial river joining the Atlantic to the Great Lakes. Through it came two devastating invaders, the sea lamprey and the alewife. The sea lamprey is an ancient, eel-like parasite. It attached itself to fish with a circular mouth full of teeth. It fed on their body fluids, killing lake trout and whitefish by the thousands. The alewife, a small silverfish, entered quietly. Once controlled by the lake trout, its population exploded when the trout disappeared. With no natural predators, the sea lamprey rose to the top of the food chain. The delicate balance of life in the Great Lakes collapsed. The lake trout numbers quickly plummeted, and the sea lamprey numbers skyrocketed. The natural checks and balances in the system had become disrupted, and so did the ecosystem. If we take a moment to really look at this diagram, it'll help in understanding part of the reason that this happened. If we start at the bottom of the diagram, we have the phytoplankton or algae. This is the base of the food chain. Everything above it relies on the phytoplankton to survive. The next level up, containing water fleas and mollusks and mussels, feed on the phytoplankton. In turn, the whitefish, herring, bloater, and others all feed on the level below them. And when we reach the top, the burbot, lake trout, and others all feed on the levels below them. But in the top left corner, standing alone, is the sea lamprey. The top of the food chain, no natural predators to control it, and it can feed on all the fish in the levels below it. It was biologically unstoppable. This graph shows the changes in lake trout and whitefish harvest that commercial fishermen had noticed happening. The numbers fluctuated year to year from the late 1800s, but show a downward trend. This was due to overfishing. In the mid-1930s, with the Welland Canal open and the arrival of lamprey, the numbers began to decline at an alarming rate. By the mid-1950s, the lake trout were all but gone, but this allowed the whitefish to multiply due to more food being available and the lake trout not eating them. Lamprey control also helped the survival of the whitefish, but the lake trout struggled to reestablish their numbers. The arrival of the zebra and quagga mussels in the 90s eliminated the base of the food chain, and the whitefish population responded as quickly as the lake trout had responded to the new invaders. As lake trout and whitefish populations plummeted, many fishermen turned to other species. The types of fish harvested changed by year as the ecosystem was changing. The fishermen were struggling to stay in business. Their harvest species were dwindling, and many gave up. The number of commercial fishermen operations had fallen from tens of thousands in the 1800s to just a few hundred by the 1960s. By 1970, only 176 remained. During this time, Michigan shifted its focus to recreational fishing, introducing salmon and heavily regulating commercial fishing and banning gill nets. Many operations couldn't afford to continue. By 2025, only 13 state-licensed commercial operations remained, and just 7 were fishing full-time. Lamprey control chemicals introduced in the 1950s have helped greatly for the lake trout, but recovery is slow. Whitefish numbers are now falling at an alarming rate also. Regulations, equipment costs, and dwindling harvest have made survival difficult for commercial fishermen. A new proposal, House Bill 4212, seeks to ban commercial fishing in the Saginaw Bay by 2027, potentially ending a 130-year-old legacy of the Bayport Fish Company. For nearly 2 centuries, commercial fishermen have battled storms, ice, pollution, and politics. The Great Lakes once promised an endless bounty, but like so many natural treasures, their abundance was limited. Like many other things, commercial fishermen of the Great Lakes may be a thing of the past. What becomes of the Great Lakes commercial fishermen in the next 20 years remains uncertain. But one thing is clear, their story is a vital chapter in the history of the Great Lakes. For local information about commercial fishing on the northeast coast of Michigan, I recommend visiting the Sturgeon Point Lighthouse Museum in Alcona County, just north of Harrisville. They have a detailed display of the local fishermen and many historic items to view. Further north, in Alpena, as part of the Besser Museum, is the Great Lakes Fisheries Heritage Exhibit, actually displaying 2 full-sized fishing vessels. For further reading, History of Commercial Fishing on Thunder Bay, 1835 to 2014, from Black River to Rockport, and also History of Commercial Fishermen, Iosco in Alcona County, 1835 to 2019, by Clarence and Bonnie Cross. For very detailed information about the history and the politics between the United States and Canada, Fishing the Great Lakes, an Environmental History, 1783-1933, by Margaret Beatty Bogue. There is also a commercial fishing video linked to this channel. Thank you for watching.